Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Fuel Arts Art and Tech online webinar series. I'm Denis Belkevich, the General Partner and CEO of Fuel Arts, and my co-host, as always, is Sonia Stablbein, Project Manager at Fuel Arts, also responsible for the Fuel Arts and Tezos Accelerator 2023. So as you know, for the next weeks, our webinars will be focused on the diversity of the Tezos ecosystem. We already had several tremendous guests. And these webinars are introducing you to the managers, curators, founders, artists, and technical experts working to develop the #1 blockchain for the arts. So at the same time, we're continuing working with the startups for the first batch of the mentioned Fuel Arts and Tezos Accelerator, and we're happy to announce you the young companies enrolled to this batch, which are currently having all those lectures and great mentorship experience. So Aerarium Chain provides a SaaS solution to support museums from preservation to crowdfunding through NFTs. Artsquare.io, fine art collecting for everyone. Cheney is building the first Netflix economy platform for collectibles. Comic 3.0 is building the next generation of graphic storytelling for Web3. Econospace is building a new Web3 social network to display and share artworks online. Kaleido is an interactive media platform that transforms the way art is shared, owned, and experienced. M1X Labs is building an NFT discovery and curation dApp on the Tezos blockchain. NFT Biennial is the first art NFT biennial. Digital Plus is a no-code AI workspace for the art, design, tech, and Web3 startups. And PromptC, just securely share prompts with semi-private NFTs. That's all simple, but genius. So my great obligation is to, I mean, not only obligation, great pleasure, great pleasure to mention the partners of official partners of Fuel Arts and Tezos Accelerator 23. Amadeo Global, a New York-based investment firm focused on public and private companies. Educate Me, a Ukrainian startup, Ukrainian platform that gathers live sessions, lessons, content, and assignments for learners in a single space. Unstoppable Domains, infrastructural partner of the batch, the Web3 domain provider. Unstoppable Domains offers NFT domains that give people full ownership and control of their digital identity. Our technical partner is Nomadic Labs, tech partner of the batch, one of the largest research and development centers within the Tezos ecosystem. The second technical partner from Germany, Radio Button, successfully developed the most ambitious and scalable projects. Tezos Art Management, a team of producers and strategists managing international art projects and delivering PR services, always also responsible for our PR activity and marketing activity. One of our media partners, Metaverse Post, they supply the market with the hottest Web3 news. Please subscribe. So, and the four last startups mentioned are represented by the mentors of this batch, Fuel Arts and Tezos Acceleration. So, Blockchain Art, represented by Christina Steinbrecher Fund, a trustworthy network for the art world, where you can discover, buy, and sell digital artworks online. Bullperks, represented by Konstantin Kogan, responsible for gamifying metaverse mentorship. Bullperks is decentralized VC and multi-chain launchpad focused on gamify. ArtPay, represented by Natasha Rotman-Letourneur, provides elegant financial and technology tools for the global art market. And Artcryption, represented by Vandana Taksali, one of the top NFT lawyers. This is a platform to sell, protect, and share creative assets and IP online. So let's present you our today's guest. We're very happy to speak with the person who represents one of the top, as we call it, blue chip platforms within the Tezos ecosystems, one of the marketplace gems. So yes, it's FX Hash, and Paul Schmidt is part of the core team at FX Hash, which is the biggest generative art platform marketplace. So Paul is an art enthusiast and collector as well. He widely talks and writes about generative art. And previous to FX Hash, Paul worked in different startups in Berlin. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hey. Hey.
Good.
Thank you for being here today, and we're very excited about this webinar and getting to know more, especially for our audience, about FX Hash.
FX Hash and generative art in particular, generative art in general, because as I said, yeah, you're representing one of the biggest generative art platforms. So let's start with a general question. How would you describe the unique value of generative art for both artists and collectors?
I think the interesting thing about generative art, first and foremost, is that it has been existed for a long time in that sense. So it's not only been around basically since the inception of NFTs, but it has been accelerated quite a lot through it. So what is interesting to generative art is that, or at least generative art as we consume it today, or as we can consume it on FX Hash, is that for both the artist as well as the collector, you don't know sort of like the ultimate outputs until you finally mint it or sort of like put the pieces on a blockchain. So before the inception of blockchains in general, generative artists highly curated their own outputs, meaning that they had like 500 prints or 500, ran the algorithm 500 times and then just chose the most, like the 5 best ones that they liked. Now this tide sort of has turned where the artists are constantly sort of like checking on their own, then ultimately uploading the algorithm and then letting the algorithm run free. And that's quite interesting for both the artist as well as the collector, as sort of like the collector, you can nearly say that the collector sort of puts the finishing touches on the artwork, and therefore like the bond is much stronger. It's sort of like a partially a gamification system, which at times also makes it so addictive once you like get it and once you understand sort of like gen art. So yeah, and then as far as like thinking broader about gen art as a whole, we at FX Hash really think that that generative art is sort of like the art movement of our era, because it perfectly encompasses sort of like what we are seeing in the world. So our whole world is dominated by tech, at times for better or for worse, and generative art can sort of like show you the beauty of tech, and can bring some people together and just overall reshape the art world and reshape sort of like what we're seeing at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I think here it makes sense as this webinar to kind of give also the description to what is actually generative art, because I feel like, it's going to be interesting for us here, like your perspective, what is generative art?
I think generative art, if we really boil it down, it is just either an algorithm or a system sort of like working on commands, but that sounds a bit like hard to imagine. And I think in the most simple terms, you can explain it as an algorithm that runs in that sense. And for example, you can see like where is it? Yeah, it's mirrored. So you can see, for example, like in the back of my mind, all of what you see is generative art in that. So you can see how it can have different shapes, different colors, and all of this is ultimately made by code or by layering images, but more often than not, it's like simple code. And instead of writing an algorithm to give you a number in that sense, you're asking the algorithm to draw a picture for you, and basically pixel by pixel, then these colors get reshaped depending on sort of like the random iterations that they are.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned today, a couple of minutes ago, that it's not a new movement. So how would you describe and how would you explain what kind of roots does generative art actually have?
I mean, ultimately, I think generative art, or like, there always have been artists that sort of like made art that is instruction based, and ultimately, as I said earlier, generative art is instruction based art. So you can have like there's a simple like example that some people always give. If you flip a coin, and if it's on heads, then you draw a line like 45 degrees upwards. If it's tails, you draw it 45 degrees downwards. And if you repeat that, you will get a unique pattern. And in essence, that is also generative art as a system sort of like guides you and tells you what to do. So if you go with that definition, then generative art has been around for far longer. If you look at what we call generative or computational art right now, it starts pretty much with the 60s with the pretty much since computers have been around, people have been trying to use code to create art. However, as mentioned in the beginning, like Herbert Franke, Werner Monat, they did, first of all, couldn't do as much as we can do today simply due to like processing or like technological capabilities of the machines. And also because just like the process was different back then, as mentioned, with like their own self-curation, so to speak. And of course, you could only print it. At times, there was no possibility to screen save or to save as or anything like that. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Great. We just wanted to ask you, let's say, but you've just replied to our question, like, okay, so we've of course noticed that some of your artists in the Tezos ecosystem, FX Hash ecosystem, they recently celebrated the life and work of Herbert Franke. So we wanted to ask you more like, is that the appreciation of historical legacy, which is very important to draw a line between the generations? So you've replied yes. So we consider that you replied yes to this question. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
yes, definitely. Because it's like they laid sort of like the foundation, the groundwork of things, and especially like as mentioned, like this started in the 60s, right? If you are like 30 years old in the 60s, you know, like 80, 90 years old. So for a lot of the early pioneers of generative art, some of them are likely already passed away or have just passed away, like Herbert Franke. Some of them are still around, but for them, it is really, and also when you're speaking to them, it is really amazing to see that now sort of like their craft gets the recognition it deserves. And that really only happened, I think, the last 3-4 years. So for example, if we look at Herbert Franke, I think over his like he's one of the earliest pioneers. He wrote like a lot of books, and like if you ask any artist, they will say like, yeah, hugely inspired by him, learned a lot from him. And over his lifetime, he only had, I think, 3 exhibitions roughly, or like maybe 4 at most, and then like 2, like one of them coming in the last year in Linz, like curated by Annika Meyer. And it's just like a amazing thing, sort of like that these people, these early pioneers, still sort of like were able to see their appreciation by a whole larger community, so to speak. And that's also then why we worked together with Annika Meyer for the fundraiser. And I think they had an initial goal of, I don't know, getting like 40,000 euros or something for their, I'm missing the word, for the charity. And like it surpassed that like by a large margin. So that was really nice to see.
Good. I mean, wise people say that the ones who don't respect the past can't create the future. So it's good that you respect and engage others to empower others to respect the past. So let's get back from let's say heritage to your current business model. So being launched in 2021, FX Hash joined the large market of online marketplaces, which was quite competitive. And what made introducing a generative art marketplace to Tezos so important for the founder and your team?
So I think pretty much we launched in November of 21. At that time, generative art already was a thing. Artbox had a huge summer. I think they crossed pretty much like all of the records. NFT as a whole were like a huge thing also in the mainstream media. However, gas price, like most of the things happened on ETH. earlier in March of that year. I think getting launched on Tezos, but again, like most of the mind share was on ETH. With that, there were again still like there wasn't a merge yet, so there were like still the environmental reasons or like the environmental concerns. Gas fees were huge. You had to pay like $100, $150 for a simple transaction, which basically does not make sense if you want to if you buy an art, like if you pay $100 or $150 for a transaction, then your artwork has to at least be worth like $400, $500 for it to make financial sense to do that transaction. Obviously, not everybody, if you think about like the world, not just as like the Western European world, like not everybody has that money to spend, but a lot of people find this very interesting. So there was a sort of like need or unmatched need for users for a cheaper, like less gassy version. And that pretty much like was possible with Tezos. Also, like again, the artist community on Hackathon was really, really strong. It was much nicer, much easier to be there, not as like cutthroat and as really like art focused, not PFP focused. So that were all sort of like little things that drove all of us, also drove Cyphered initially to Tezos. And then ultimately, like there was no option to upload generative art or to upload an algorithm. Again, you could only upload curations, or you could apply to curation boards like on ETH and Artbox. And again, only like 0.001% of artists were able to release projects on there. So again, like a huge unmatched need for artists now as well as collectors. Yeah, and then Cyphered sort of like saw that opportunity, coded up FX hash, I think. Actually quite funny, like within a month, like with a broken hand. So really only worked with like one hand, but coded it up as a like passion project. And then released it. So Cyphered himself, like he's a generative artist, so he knew sort of like what was needed from the ecosystem as he was directly coming from that. He released it in like a beta version, really not expecting traffic, so to speak. But we pretty much hit like immediate product market fit, since it like any artist could upload basically like Cyphered always wanted to create an Instagram like feeling. If you want to share something, you can do so. So that's what we did. Basically, you upload your algorithm and then you're good. And as a collector, you could also just buy what you want with like gas fees that were like in the sense, and like with prices in the beginning, like because some pieces were free, some pieces cost like 0.1 Tez or 1 Tez. So it was really easy to get started and to sort of, yeah, just enjoy collecting on FX hash.
Thank you, Paul. Also, kind of like same question, but in a different wording probably. But I think it's important also to ask you, how do you believe actually FX hash stands out among other marketplaces? Because I feel like we do understand it now, but I feel our audience would love to hear more about it.
So first of all, I mean, unlike most other projects, we are both a platform and a marketplace. So some are just a marketplace, but mostly aggregators. Some are just platforms and have no integrated marketplace, which doesn't help their liquidity or sort of like, yeah, getting new not investors, but getting new people to buy the art in that sense. I think first and foremost, what separates us from others is that we are completely open. So there's no curation involved. Pretty much, I think all other market platforms have a curation of some sort that are doing. We are not. We are quite product focused, especially for artists. Again, like coming from the background of having Cyphered as our like technical lead, product, so to speak. He's an artist himself. Like he knows what we need to build still, or what is missing from the current platforms. So I think that innovation, that drive, really helps us. And then again, coming from that test community, I think our community has an inherent like different set of values than the other ones. So the overall test ecosystem has it in that sense. Like we all honor artist royalties. We will continue to do so. And that is something, for example, that ETH platforms, I mean, you can see it at the moment, they're not doing that. But they're quite, but yeah, on Tezos they are, and that can also, of course, be like a competitive advantage for people that care about that, especially if you're an artist. who then needs to decide on, do they want to like drop art on platforms that respect me, or ultimately platforms that do not respect me as much. So yeah, I think these are just like a few things of how we can stand out. And then of course, like we were the only platform like in the whole of Gen Art NFT world that actually was at Art Basel instead of like being like by Art Basel or doing like a side event. So that's of course also always nice, like a little thing to say.
Thank you, Paul. Let's just continue speaking about Art Basel and your Art Basel experience, because Art Basel is a mixture of the audiences, actually all the art world, and biggest part of the digital world out there, especially in Miami, which is now is the center of crypto art activity, especially in the US. So FX Hash have exhibited at the Tezos pavilion at Art Basel. So what do you personally feel about the presence of NFT-based and generative art for your community at a fair like this, at a physical fair? And do you feel it impacted the traditional Art Basel audience? What are your personal expressions?
So we as a team we were at Art Basel Hong Kong, but we have not been able to go there because back then there was still like quarantine issues. So I can't speak for like being on the ground in Hong Kong, but I did Basel, Paris, and then Miami, and you could really see that sort of like an evolution is happening from the normal visitors, so to speak. So in Basel, which was in June of 22, there were still a lot of questions. What is a blockchain? What is an NFT? Really, they're not understanding fully sort of like what we're doing. It was much more like, okay, hey, these are pictures, and how is that like, what has that to do with art? Not everybody, but these voices were more often heard than, for example, than in Paris or in Miami. You could really see like an evolution happening. Sometimes also just like people coming up, hey, I was in Hong Kong, I was in Basel, now I'm in Paris and I see you guys again. Now please explain to me what the fuck are you doing in that sense. So you could really see like an evolution of the traditional collectors. You could see you didn't really see like more digital screens in that sense. Like Pace Gallery had some, and then some galleries had like multimedia installations, sometimes with like screens and like within an artwork or stuff like that. So in general, like it was still very traditional. However, it was really good for us to be there to talk, to also like speak with the people that were interested in you, and it just like gave us, obviously, like us and Tezos, like a huge visibility push, and also just like you got to know like a lot of people that want to incorporate generative art in their museums, for example, or in their local institutions, their galleries. And there you could really see, okay, this is a larger movement than sort of like just what we see day to day on our PC screens, so to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you. Also, I would love to know your perspective, because there is a gap, and I feel like we cannot deny it, between NFT-based art and traditional art. And same goes with collectors of traditional art and NFT-based art. What do you think needs to be done to kind of make this gap smaller, to kind of, so it's not that huge as today?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. If you ask galleries, they might not want that gap to decrease further. I think first of all, it's like quite different, sort of like how people, or like how art is collected traditionally versus in our world, whereas you need social credit, whereas you need a lot of money, whereas you might need to buy 2 or 3 in like a traditional gallery setting to even be considered for a new release of this like new and upcoming artist. In our digital Web3 world, if you're there, you can just buy it. You just need to make sure that you're fast in that sense. Overall, I think that the collecting experience is at times, or basically what we're seeing right now in the digital world, is like a shift towards physical things. So people also want to like hang up their art in that sense, similar to how Denis has it in its background. But ultimately, I think further narrowing the gap will happen either through, for example, platforms like us working directly together with galleries, sort of like slowly onboarding traditional collectors. We have seen it, for example, here in Berlin at a gallery that never worked with NFTs or generative art before, but had an artist on their roster that dropped frequently on FX Hash. So after the artist like talked for a year with the head of the gallery, like she was like, okay, easy, we do this. And then when you like explain this to traditional collectors and take some of their fears away and show it to them in a setting that they are comfortable in, meaning a gallery and not a PC in that sense, then they understand and see the value of the art. So really it is, I think, to me, it is much more about like showcasing the art in spaces and spheres sort of like the traditional art collectors are used to. And then they will understand it. And that is also one of our focuses for this year, basically to do more real life events and then really showcase the people like the beauty of Gen art and the uniqueness of it.
Did I hear you correctly that you're planning to organize more real life events? Did I hear you right?
Yeah, exactly. Because we have seen that it's just like if you're in a gallery, like you just also have like at times just like people walking in, and while that might not scale initially, it will over time in that sense. And also like the artists are quite liking it being like represented as a normal artist would be, and ultimately not digital art or generative art is a subsection of the broader art ecosystem. So why shouldn't they be displayed in physical locations just because the art initially is digital?
Absolutely. And so what kind of events do you plan to organize? Like, do you already have something that you can announce, or is it something that is secret yet?
I think sort of like most are not quite secret in that sense, but like working together with like different either ecosystem initiatives, working together with some museums, sort of like to be part of theirs. Actually can't really tell, or like I'm not allowed to tell all of these yet. But pretty much we're aiming for like to have something like once a month, pretty much all across the world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. You know, we've been mentioning the word ecosystem and Tezos ecosystem for many times today, and we know that the Tezos ecosystem is famous for being a real friendly, startup-friendly ecosystem where everyone collaborates inside. And what's your experience of collaboration with the other startups? In other way, how do you interact with the other art and tech startups within the Tezos ecosystem?
So yes, what you said, I can say is true. I think what we are mostly doing is it's not as much of a us against them mentality, but rather a mentality of us growing the pie simultaneously. And if each sort of like individual startup or player acts in a way that is beneficial to the broader ecosystem, then we all will benefit from that. So I think that is sort of like one thing that separates us already, simply due to the fact that it's like a completely different mode of working together. And then instead of, for example, competing on like again going back to like the royalty topic, I think that's quite a good example. Like on ETH, everybody is competing for the same 500 power traders. With their decrease in royalties and ultimately just completely financializing everything. Whereas then we on Tezos as like the four largest marketplaces platforms have basically collaborated and basically said, okay, we were always on royalties, basically did like a how do you say, marketing push each at the same time, basically to show also the unification of the Tezos ecosystem. And then like I still think that is also like one of our like main development goals, sort of like showcasing or like being as open source as possible, letting anyone sort of like use our tech stack where it is needed. And again, like just growing the pie and like basically if you teamwork makes the dream work, so to speak. Yeah.
Great. I mean, I'm happy with your answer.
Also, with the bear market that's been happening already for a while, I feel it's going to be strange not to also cover it here. How do you feel being in FX Hash? How did it influence the company? What is your take on this?
I think pretty much like if we are taking like the start point as like the ultra bear market as like the FTX collapse, then actually we have fared quite nice in terms of like Tezos volume. We never really declined. We actually grew, which was quite interesting. But that is much more like a thing of the overall Gen Art market. I think pretty much everything tanked except Gen Art because people either realized that other, let's call it like NFT asset classes have like maybe had too much of a market cap, had too much of a value, or people are realizing, which is much rather like my hypothesis, that Gen Art is this one thing that actually makes sense, that actually is already there also from like a technological level. So from that perspective, the bear market, of course, did not help us, but it sort of like helped in like showcasing this to like a broader community. And I think also like through that, we got more people from the ETH side that were sort of like looking for the next edge to be gained, so to speak. And then they quickly realized, okay, I might have flagged Tezos for a long time, but I cannot do it anymore. There are valuable, like valid projects out there. So yeah, bear market, of course, not always nice, but we, I think, weathered the storm quite nice. And for example, in January, we had our best month ever. So not too fussed by it.
That sounds very interesting that you actually had more audience and different audience thanks to bear, basically.
Yeah. Also because during hard times, people always need something different, something new, and generative art and AI art was something like a relief for the artists, because they were they were experimenting with the new forms, and you provided them with the tools. Regarding the bear market, this morning we received, I wouldn't say great, but nice news that the correlation between the S&P 500 index and the Bitcoin index, which means the crypto index, indeed, so it decreased sufficiently to 0.3, which means that, yeah, because 6 months ago, the correlation was 0.8, which was which meant that the crypto, let's say, in general, that meant that the crypto market was very dependent on the brick and mortar physical market. And now it means that the crypto assets are more and more being considered as alternative assets, as it was before 2000, let's say 2020, 2021. So that doesn't mean automatically that the crypto winter or bear market is over, but these are quite inspiring news, which predict, let's say, the new bull run in from several months to a year. That's why our next question. But of course, let's say in 2, 3, 5 years, there will be tremendous rises and maybe another bear market. So where would you like to see FX Hash in 5 years, after several bull runs and several bear markets as well? So in terms of the market niche and the values that your company exposes.
I think in 5 years, it is safe to assume that we would like to see generative art being at least widely known in the, let's say at least within the art space, widely known. Art does not every person in the world needs to know it in that sense, but the people that enjoy art should know it, should have probably bought something before already, and pretty much just having like a sort of like also like education part and system readily available for everybody to teach it to themselves on their own. We would like to see more people in general just like enjoying art, buying art. I think like 200 years ago, like every family had like 5 to 10 art paintings like at their home on average. Like today we don't have this because again, like there's this antiquated gallery system. So we really would like to see in 5 years these boundaries being like not being there anymore. I think like, yeah, and then in general, just like offering our artists a pipeline pretty much from the start until the end. So basically you can learn how to code, how to create generative art on FX Hash, and ultimately If you're if you're a talent, have like a prosperous career, we can also like get you the right contacts to be displayed at a gallery, to maybe find your own first gallery, to sort of like find ways to work with the curator, find ways to get your art exhibited in museums, and really just like working across the whole spectrum of the things. But also, truth to be told, like, yes, we have a rough 5-year plan, but like I think like a lot of things will happen, so it's hard to say like, hey, we want to do X, Y, and Z, so to speak. But I think like the bigger thing probably is that by that time we will have like a unified like Gen Art community that ultimately does not care too much about the chain it will run on, because like it will be multi-chain pulled anyways, and it will all run in the back and the front end probably will be just like, hey, like you're on FXhash right now, choose what chain you're on, and same for other platforms in the space. Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, it's a general question and nobody can tell about 5-year plan, especially in this space. But I feel it's always interesting just to see, and just to hear from someone what is the expectations and what are the kind of ideas for the future. So we're always finishing with this question. So we're always asking for tips in the end. So what would be your tips for aspiring founders in NFT space? So just for people who are just entering and who would love to create a new product, something new.
First of all, be product driven in that sense, like listen to what is needed in the community. I think that's the first one. Second one, like don't get caught up in the hype. Probably there's a lot of things and hot things that are always like happening, especially on Twitter or in Discord chats, that are hugely relevant for 2 days, but ultimately don't move the needle. So sort of like build products that are actually needed. Don't listen to the hype. Don't go into any next topic just because you think it is worth it. And then probably just like talk with people, be engaged, sort of like be out there, and always sort of like look for the next edge or the next possibility in that sense. I know that's like really general and probably could be applied to any startup vertical. But that's what really helped us in the beginning. So we were super product focused. That really helped us. We didn't listen in to the hype, so to speak, but just like continued to build on what we think we should build. And then maybe otherwise, like if you need to do marketing, rather just like choose one channel and really go deep on that instead of like trying to do your same marketing strategy for 5 different ones. So yeah, that's also what like helped us a lot, just like focusing on Twitter and then letting that be our like main vertical of communication with our community, or like with the broader Gen Art community.
Thank you, Paul.
Our startups, I mean, from the Fuelarts and Tezos acceleration batch, are listening to you now very attentively, and I believe they can fully consider that a part of the mentorship, because it was very, specified and based on your experience. Also, I know that a large number of our startups enrolled would like to cooperate with FXhash. So in the next months, we really expect on let's say some successful cooperations and links between the newcomers of the market and one of the blue chips, which is FXhash. That should prove again and again that the Tezos ecosystem is a friendly ecosystem. So thank you, Paul. That was really productive. Even in 40 minutes, we've covered all the questions, and we received direct replies of yours, and it was both professional, energetic, and full of inspirational ideas. So thank you again for joining us. Please turn on the mic.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. That was quite fun.
Yeah, for the first time in our life, we had a generative webinar. So
true.
Very true.
Good. So thanks again. And our audience, I mean, I'm addressing to our audience. We're meeting in a week with another representative of the Tezos art ecosystem. Stay tuned, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Stay less related with gaps, hazards, and all the bad things which are happening in our world. Take care.
Easy. Bye-bye.